Salut.
你好，
E aí,
Untitled
galera?
Chapter.
欢迎来到 Travel Tribe。
Bem-vindo ao Travel Tribe.
Bienvenue au podcast de Triple Trip.
Welcome to the Travel Tribe podcast. Once-in-a-lifetime journeys have a way of completely transforming our lives. Anyone who has been on such a transformative adventure knows that you never come back quite the same. There's a shift in the way you perceive the world and your old life. Today, we have Grant Ross, the captain of Good Vibes and Boogie, who will be sharing how his 13-month and 16,000-kilometer trip from Scotland to South Africa changed the path of his life. We chat about his inspiration for the trip, the highs and the lows, what you could learn yourself from such a long-distance cycling trip, post-adventure hangovers and finding meaning afterwards, and how his trip helped pave the way for starting a business of sharing joy at Secret Sunrise, where he has helped unite over 50,000 people around the world through music, movement, and connection. This week's episode is a beautiful blend of journey, reflection, and entrepreneurship. Please welcome Captain Boogie to the Travel Tribe.
Hey, Jordan. Great South African accent, by the way.
I gave you my warning before the show that it might pop up. How are you?
I cannot complain. Yeah, all good. Thanks for having me on the show.
Wow, we're excited to have you here. Where are you joining us from today?
Sunny but chilly South Africa, on the coast in the Eastern Cape.
What do you got on there? Is that a bathrobe or?
I call it Big Papa. It's my sheepskin Africa burn jacket.
We're excited that you're here to share your story. So where would you like to start?
I guess it makes sense to give context why we decided to do something so outlandish.
Where did the inspiration come from?
So we had just finished university. Quite a sad story, actually. A good friend of myself and Sebastian, my partner in crime, who cycled every inch with me from Scotland back to Cape Town. One of our best friends passed away in 2007. It's kind of really shook us quite drastically and made us realize that at 23 years old, as much as you feel like you're invincible, you're actually not. Both of us decided that we just need to grab life by the horns and do something crazy while we're still alive, celebrate life, do something that, keeps you on your toes and just goes way out of your comfort zone. And we threw around a couple of ideas and landed on cycling from Scotland back home. Yeah, the inspiration was really to just live as hard as we could at 23, 24 years old.
So you guys started the journey up in northern Scotland?
Yeah, so we worked in London for 6 months, gathering some pounds because the South African rand doesn't quite stretch as far. Worked there for 6 months, got some funding for the trip, and then took a train up to Scotland, up to the very northern spot in John O'Groats, and put our backsides on the saddles and started cycling.
And so what was the kind of the planning that went behind it, the trip? Did you guys have a certain route you guys wanted to take? Was there a certain amount of money you guys needed to budgeting for?
We actually thought it would take a bit longer than it eventually did. We thought it would take about 20 months. So we budgeted 10 British pounds a day as a budget for each of us. And this was back in 2010. So it doesn't sound like a lot. And through Europe, it's tougher to stick to budget, but through Africa, it was fine. Yeah, we had a general idea of where we wanted to go in terms of route, but we're very open to just allowing whatever transpired to lead us and kind of go with the flow and leave it open to the adventure.
Were there any fears that you guys were experiencing before you guys went in, or was it mostly just an adrenaline rush? Let's get after it.
Yeah, I mean, fear is an interesting thing. There were definitely hesitations as to whether this was a good idea or not. We knew some people who had done similar adventures, but when you decide to cycle, 16,000 kilometers, naturally, you're like, what are we thinking here? Is this a logical decision? And I guess that was the main fear. But as soon as we had booked our flights to start the first steps of saving some money to get the trip going, everything just dissipated and we're just psyched from then on in, just ready to get to the start line. So yeah, there was a bit of initial fear, but everything from there was, once you've committed, there's no turning back, and it's just excitement for the adventure ahead.
So where did you guys stay along your journey? Were you guys camping out? Were you guys staying in hostels?
We have so many stories about where we stayed. We carried a little 2-man tent between the two of us. Obviously, weight on your bicycle is a big factor. You've got to pedal every single thing that you carry along the route. So you want to pack as minimalistically as possible. So we had a very small 2-man tent, myself and Sebastian, my co-adventurer. We shared a lot of personal space together. We camped mostly. It was obviously the most cost-effective way of being, especially through Europe where it's a bit more expensive. But we stayed everywhere, from youth hostels to people who took us in to restaurants to beaches we slept under a truck one night. We slept in the desert just on the floor, in forests, wherever we find a clear, safe space to rest our heads. Every day really was just, who knows where we'll sleep tonight. And I guess that's part of the fun and the adventure.
Any bad circumstances that happened from you guys? I know we had a guy on the show who did 5 months of not spending any money traveling throughout Europe. And he said when he slept in the park or something, he got robbed. So he would try to stay out of the big cities. Anything along those lines? Any scary situations?
Always in hindsight, you think of the situation that you were in and think, wow, that could have gone quite wrong. One comes to mind when we were in Egypt, just south of Cairo. We were cruising along and we were looking for a place to stay, and our general route was following the Nile. It's kind of the most obvious and most hospitable place to cycle through Egypt. So it's a very densely populated area. So finding a quiet spot to pitch your tent is virtually impossible. Through the night, we had people kind of inquisitively coming around our tent and checking things out on a consistent basis. And eventually there was a group of guys who were armed, and they came to our area and asked us to pack up our stuff and follow them. So, we felt pretty chilled at the time. And eventually what it ended up being were civilian police. They have civilian police in Egypt, and they kept us in a kind of a compound for the night, and felt quite dodgy at the, in hindsight. Who knows who they were, but we managed to negotiate our way out of it pretty swiftly and changed a couple of jokes afterwards and then just carried on. There's always something. But generally, I think the theme of our trip was that there's a big misconception about the safety in Africa and the people. And the big theme of our trip was actually the people are so incredibly friendly and welcoming, and we felt super safe. And maybe it's because we were two grubby young dudes on a bicycle who are very harmless, and maybe that helped us along the way. But generally, we were very welcomed in every area that we went to and felt very safe. And, our biggest threat was probably the traffic cycling along these busy African roads. The people weren't necessarily there to get at us or steal our stuff or anything.
What were the countries, any countries that kind of really surprised you during your trip on the hospitality or the beauty of them?
Sudan was such an incredible place in terms of people there and the hospitality that they showed. There's a lot of negative press about a place like Sudan, and they obviously have their problems in the various areas, but they're quite isolated, or they were at least back then. For the entire journey through the deserts to, throughout the country, people would welcome us. They would cook for us. They'd give us their beds. And even though they had nothing, they were willing to give everything. So we're completely blown away by how amazing the people in Sudan were. Maybe because we had a preconceived idea of what it might be, but nevertheless, they were amazing.
While you guys were going outside of that little situation in Egypt, were there any other close calls with maybe running out of food or anything like that? If I'm thinking about going through the desert, I'm automatically thinking running out of water or food. Were there any other close calls like that?
As I said, traffic was always a risk. Quite a close call in Croatia when we were cycling through the European leg of our trip. Close call with a car that kind of shaved one of my panniers, the bags on my bike. And again, in hindsight, to think of that, it just kind of blows my mind that we're just at the mercy of all these drivers all the time. But that ended up being okay. And then in Mozambique, in the very north of Mozambique, previously war-torn area and not a lot of infrastructure. And we eventually, after about 100 kilometers of sandy dirt road, we got to a little village and we were looking for food. Two young guys on bicycles get hungry, and that's our fuel is food. That's what keeps us going. It's not petrol or diesel, it's food. So food is high priority on our list. And we got to this little village and asked someone, is there any way we can get some food? And they just shrugged their shoulders and carried on walking, like, no, sorry. And it was the most absurd scenario where, you ask someone for food and they don't have an option, which was kind of sad and kind of stressful at the same time because we were really hungry. But luckily, kept a reserve tin of tuna and a jar of peanut butter right at the bottom for just such emergencies, which we didn't mix the two, but we plowed through that pretty swiftly. Yeah, that was quite a memorable and kind of a strange scenario. But the weird thing is you can't find food, but you can find Coca-Cola around every single corner. So, yeah, good ad for Coke, eh?
Speaking of food you guys brought, so what else did you guys bring along with you guys in your backpack? You mentioned a tent, you mentioned a little bit of food. What else did you guys bring along?
We, from Scotland back to London, was kind of our trial initial section where we were going to kind of see what we could wean out. And after the 600 kilometers or whatever it was from John O'Groats back to London, we basically just stripped everything and started throwing clothes and things that we really thought were vital. And really, if you carrying all of that with your legs and your backside, you willing to chuck anything. So we lived very minimalistically. We had the bare essentials. Obviously, a medical kit is high priority. Going through Africa, you need your anti-malarials and your general anesthetics and things like this. Then we had a water purifier, which came in handy quite a lot. Our tent, a mattress, 1 or 2 changes of clothes. Then we'd obviously carry a bit of food with us and a little gas stove, a frisbee, which doubled as a plate. Yeah, so we really lived minimalistically, and it's kind of taught us a lot. It's kind of set the tone for the rest of our lives. In essence, we spent 13 months living out of a little bag and really not needing much, and learning that in life you're happy with the experiences and not with the material goods that you carry with you and burden yourself with. So yeah, that was a beautiful metaphor for that.
After those 13 months, everything else that you add on to just a luxury.
Exactly.
We always kind of talk about how, like, sometimes when you're in Thailand, some of the people might seem like they just don't have much except for a hut and some food, but they always are just so generally happy, living very minimalistic lives, spending time with their families. So, and just so I can visualize, I'm kind of curious to see how your route looked like. You started up in Scotland, went down to London, and can you walk us through the countries that you went through?
Yeah, so we went down from the UK into France, and then flirted with Belgium, into Germany, down through the Alps, which is obviously quite hilly, into Austria, over some more alpine roads into Italy. And then we skirted along the Dalmatian coast, Slovenia, Croatia, Albania, which was really interesting, Montenegro, and eventually ended up in Athens. And the plan was to then hop on a boat or something. We didn't really have a plan. We just like, when we get there, we'll figure it out. But there was nothing available. So we hopped on a flight to Cairo. And then we did the Nile down into Sudan, went east into Ethiopia, which is also incredibly mountainous and hilly. Yeah, very difficult on a bike. And then Kenya, then headed back west into Uganda, then south, Rwanda, Burundi, Tanzania, Malawi, which was incredible along the lake, then Mozambique, which was super sandy and hot, and then eventually back into South Africa, 2,000 Ks along our coast, back to Cape Town.
Wow, that's incredible. And during all these different countries that you guys visited, do you guys have any issues with visas?
Surprisingly not. We obviously needed to do a little bit of homework before leaving, and we managed to organize our visa at the capital city before the country that we needed to get into. So every time we got into the capital, we'd organize the visa for the next country. And the nice thing about cycling is you have a little bit of time. You're not necessarily gunning in 24 hours through a country. So we managed to organize all of that, and our South African passport managed to get us pretty swiftly through most of the countries through Africa. And so, yeah, so it wasn't too much of an issue.
And so how would you kind of compare that slow travel, as you mentioned, that you don't have to gun it like you normally would through a country, of slowly going through it as opposed to, quickly coming in and out? What were some of the different things that you experienced by slowly traveling through countries?
Sure. How much time do we have? Yeah, I think the biggest outtake that we got from our journey was that traveling by bicycle is just magical, because in a vehicle as beautiful and as convenient as it is, you're kind of in a little bubble and you can see things, but you've got a very small tendency to just stop randomly and take something in, or listen or smell, or stop in a random village, usually very focused on the destination. Whereas a bicycle, it's very much just about the journey. You're at the mercy of the elements. You're listening, you're smelling. Stopping is almost welcomed. So you'll stop in the most random spots and have the most crazy experiences, meet people, kids, animals. We cycled through a couple of game parks and had to kind of alternate our views so that we always had an eye on either side of us. So yeah, those kinds of experiences are kind of being thrown at you around every single corner, and your day is so full with sights and sounds and experiences, and you want to get your camera out around every corner. And I think that was something that I can definitely recommend to anyone is going on a small bicycle trip. If you're able to, it's a whole nother spin on travel and journey, and it is literally about the journey. And again, I think a lot of people say that life is about the journey, it's not about the destination. And I think that was just a great outtake from our trip.
I had a chance to do a motorcycle trip and through Vietnam, and that was also kind of a way to kind of slow down, probably put like 100 kilometers in each day. And you had no idea where you're staying that day, small town or whatever, as opposed to, traveling by plane or by train. You're always staying in like the biggest cities. So it was a really nice way to explore some of the more culture of the country by doing that and slow things down as well. What was like a typical day like when you guys were on your trip? Was there a certain amount of kilometers you guys want to accomplish a day, or was it hitting up certain spots?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, we're very flexible. Sometimes we'd set ourselves a target if we had like a nice kind of destination to look forward to in a couple of weeks. We'd say, cool, let's try get there in 14 days or whatever it is, and then set ourselves kind of mini goals. But I guess on average we'd probably cover between 80 to 100 kilometers per day, which sounds like a lot. What's that in miles? Probably about 60 miles a day. It sounds like a lot, but if that's all you're doing all day, you do kind of 60 kilometers before lunch. You would stop, have a snack, have a bite to eat, have a snooze under a tree, and then carry on, do another 40 Ks. And before you know it, you've covered a lot of distance in the day. Some days we'd cover nothing. We'd do 15 kilometers or something ridiculous, and we'd just find another epic spot, and we're like, we need to stop here. This is just too good to pass. And I think that was the great thing about not having a strict timeline or agenda. We just left it open-ended and open to anything that was thrown at us. Yeah, so it very much varied. Some of our biggest days we covered were through the Nubian desert, just because it was so inhospitable. There wasn't much to stop for. So we would cover kind of 200 kilometers per day. I think our biggest day was about 235 Ks. We'd cycle at night to avoid the heat and then just sleep in a shady spot in the day. So we'd just adapt to whatever was thrown at us. Ethiopia, our mileage slowed down quite a lot just because you're doing a 16-kilometer hill in one go at 3,000 meters or something, and your body can only take so much. So
I'm just curious, when it comes to like finding a spot to camp out at night, are there any tips you have for finding a good spot that's safe, or would you just right off the road, or how would you guys locate the place that you guys would tent at?
Good question. Obviously everywhere was different and threw different things at us. Yeah, I think you just get a feel for it after a while. Naturally, you're wanting somewhere as quiet as possible with as few people around as possible, just for safety's sake and just not being bugged while you're trying to sleep. Sometimes, depending on the country, we'd actually aim for little towns and stay in a little, whatever it was, like a cottage or find a bed somewhere for cheap, just because a place like Ethiopia, for instance, has got 80 million people in a country the size of a small state. So very difficult to find any free space to camp. It really depended. Some countries, it's just wide open spaces and you find little nooks and crannies and forests and beaches and whatever you might find. We'd always reach about dusk time and be like, cool, let's keep an eye out for a camping spot. And that's kind of the exciting time, is like, what is good, where are we going to sleep tonight? Where are we going to be camping? It's just the most obscene thing, not knowing where you're going to sleep the next night. But all part of the adventure.
It's kind of like a little bit scary, but also kind of liberating and exciting, not knowing, where the night's going to take you. I was kind of curious, were there any kind of countries that really surprised you, that you found were really underrated in terms of beauty? I know you mentioned Sudan, that people were really friendly and hospitable, but were there any countries that that kind of really blew you away for what they offered?
I think two really standout countries in Africa were Uganda and Malawi. Uganda being quite an equatorial space, jungles and chimps and gorillas and banana trees everywhere and friendly people and beautiful mountains and tropical scenes wherever you go. It's just a beautiful, beautiful place. Malawi, same kind of friendly culture. And then obviously Lake Malawi stretching majority of the country. Incredible beaches and, beautiful surroundings and trees. And I think those two were definitely standouts. In Europe, I think everything had something different to offer. We loved Germany just because they had cycle paths everywhere. So it was really easy to cycle. They were just very accommodating for cyclists. I think that we really enjoyed that. Croatia was beautiful, just following that coast. And I'm sure many people have been there.
When you were down in Africa, any close encounters with any animals?
I wouldn't say any close calls. As I mentioned, we cycled through a couple of reserves just to kind of get through. Yeah, we covered a couple of those in Uganda and one in Mozambique. We saw game, saw some elephants and buffalo. I think on a bicycle, you're okay. Luckily, we didn't see any cats or anything that's super risky. Yeah, we had a little snake that crawled under our tent one night, just obviously for the warmth. We only realized this in the morning. And but I think in general, we didn't have any close calls. But we had some encounters.
Let's say you're finishing up your trip over here to get to South Africa, and you finally reach your destination. I'm sure it takes a day or two to finally fully relax, and you're reflecting back on the trip. What were some of the thoughts you had or reflections based on your trip?
It was such an interesting time. As I said, when you're on the trip, you're just living day to day. The beautiful thing is you just completely in the moment, you're enjoying the journey, and you're not really thinking about the end. And then it finally comes, and there's a big hoorah, and we had a huge bunch of all of our friends and family join us for the last leg into Cape Town. We had a big gathering and a late night party just to celebrate being home. And then the hangover wears off and you wake up the next morning and suddenly everything is kind of back to normal and you haven't really thought about this step. And I think it's an actual syndrome called, let me get this right. It's post-expedition syndrome or something where, you kind of feel a little bit aimless or, just a little bit empty in some senses. And I think Sebastian, who I cycled with, can attest to it. You leave and then 2 years later you arrive again and everything is kind of moved on and you kind of expect it to be the same and everyone's kind of getting on with their lives. So it was a very strange time. We kind of needed a bit of time to get back into the normal swing of life and understanding what our next steps were. And it took at least 6 months to get back into some sort of rhythm, some sort of normality. And it wasn't a fun experience. And I don't think there's any kind of recommendation or cure for what we experienced. But I guess it's just part of the arrival after a life-changing journey. You kind of have to come back to some sort of normality and hit the ground again.
That's so true. I for sure definitely can relate to this. I know some of my friends who are also living abroad can relate to the repatriation process. So like when you kind of go back to normal life, whether you were, I was working as a dive instructor in Thailand for a little bit. I was also in Korea, and going back is always such a weird, transition, because as you mentioned, people have gone on and moved on, and life's still kind of the same, but people have also moved on. So I definitely can relate to you on that.
Exactly.
You kind of ended up, having this crazy journey where every day was an adventure. You had no idea where it led you, and then you had to kind of transition back to normality. What was the next step? Did you go on to working in a corporation or starting your own event?
Mm-hmm. We did the cycle after we graduated from university, and I did a business science degree at University of Cape Town. So I was kind of gearing up to get into the financial corporate world, and that's what all my university peers got into after they graduated. So I think I kind of just felt like that's what I've got to do, is just go to interviews and start getting into what's expected of you once you graduate. But obviously going through such an incredible journey and transformation and learning so much about myself and life and perspective. Yeah. I had actually one of the most kind of profound moments in my life when I was sitting in an interview foyer waiting to go in for one of these interviews I was applying for, one of these jobs I was applying for. And I was kind of formally dressed, and the collar was digging into my neck. And this is after being in shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops for the last 13 months. And I just thought, what the hell am I doing? I don't want to be here. I've got, crazy cycle tan, and I want to maintain it, so I just knew in that moment, in that foyer, in that marble floor, that this is not the path that I want to take. And it was a beautiful moment of clarity for me. And I actually went and continued the interview, just out of respect. And it actually went really well because I didn't really care anymore. So I was super relaxed. Yeah. From that moment on, I knew I wanted to just not kind of do anything run of the mill. I didn't want to kind of subscribe to the normal. And that led me on a path to, I started, actually myself and Sebastian started working on some trail running events. Cape Town is very, it lends itself super well to being out on the mountain, going on trail runs and those sorts of things. And it's a very outdoorsy type of city. Started getting into a few events, organizing gigs, and I did that for 2 years. And as time passed, I started uncovering what my passions were and what my truth was, and I then started to find my rhythm and my true meaning.
I feel like my story is very similar to yours. And after doing my MBA, I was also applying for all these corporate jobs. And I just remember, I was like, I really hope that they just don't call me back, because it's going to put me in a difficult predicament. Similar to you, just sitting there with that collar going, and I just knew this is not right, So you were going on to start your own thing. Were there any doubts in the beginning while you were starting your own organization or trying to pursue your own entrepreneurial interests?
We kind of started without realizing we were starting anything. So myself, Sebastian, and 2 other friends were living together at the time. This was 2012, so a little time ago. Yeah, we were all living in the same house. We call it a digs. I don't know if you call it the same in the US or wherever it might be. But we were living together, and we were all working. We were doing our event stuff. Dan and Travis were in their day jobs, and we all shared the common intention of just making a difference somehow. I think it's a beautiful trait of our generation. We just have this yearning to have an impact, make a difference in some other way. So yeah, we just spoke about this and decided to start a list of things that we could do that had fun and made a difference. Those are the mantra of of what we wanted to do. So we wrote down this list, then decided to just start ticking them off without any intention of starting a business or anything. We just did. We're at that age where you just do. The actual decision of starting our own business, being an entrepreneur, wasn't a conscious one at the time. We were just kind of being and living our lives and starting with our intention and I guess it's mission driven, We didn't really have time to think or doubt. So eventually we started ticking off these items off our living list. We didn't call it a bucket list because we weren't kicking the bucket yet. Very much living. It gave birth to an organization that we just started doing projects that had fun and made a difference. One of which was Secret Sunrise. So we went up to Zambia to go assist a tree planting project up there and bring our positive vibe points to the project. And we decided to test something out on the crew there up in the Zambian tree planting project. We decided that in order to get people firing into their day, we wanted to do something a little bit different. So we set up some speakers. We got about 60 people, consisting of a bunch of local people and volunteers from all over the world who were at the tree planting project together. And we took them through a journey of music and movement and dance. And something just happened that morning to that Zambian sunrise where we just knew that couldn't be a once-off. And so we took it back to Cape Town. And knowing that playing music in the morning to the sunrise in a city just wouldn't go down so well for people trying to sleep. So we introduced the headphones and developed the offering and the product to what it is today. And Secret Sunrise kind of grew into its own project and personality. We did one in Cape Town and people just wanted more. So we did another one and we did another one. And it started growing and people started asking for us to do it in Johannesburg, which is the other major city in South Africa. And then it spread to the other major centers. And then we had people wanting it in London and Amsterdam. So we decided to start empowering people because our whole mandate is to share positivity and share joy. And if other people are empowered to be able to do that through this tool, then we're winning. That's what we're currently doing, is training people on the methodologies and the mission of Secret Sunrise to share their joy and their positivity with their city, with the use of this concept. As I said in the beginning, it wasn't really our initial mission. Our initial mission was just to make a difference in some way.
Well, that's super cool that I know you guys are on now to 16 cities, quite a following online, which is pretty cool. So what makes Secret Sunrise unique? What are some of the components of a Secret Sunrise event?
We're bringing people back to what is important. And I think this was beautifully taught by our cycle. It's the small moments in life and the experiences that we take on as humans that are the important things. It's not how much money we have in the bank or how many possessions we have at the end of the day. It's how rich your soul is with life experiences and joyful moments. And so it's something that's not, we don't offer something tangible. It's an experience, and it's been developed so that every single facet of what we offer is having a positive impact on everyone who arrives. So through music, which is a language we all speak, through to movement, which is also a language we all speak. I mean, you see these beautiful videos of babies who are 6 months old just learning to walk and they're dancing. That's not, it's somehow just in our DNA. And then the final element is connection. So in this day and age where we're more connected than ever, but also as disconnected as ever because we're constantly on social media, which isn't real connection, we know that this is fundamental to people's well-being. It's just, having some sort of connection to yourself, to others, and the planet is fundamental as a human being to our well-being. So everything we do is to uplift people and share positivity and joy. And I think if there are other products out there doing that, then we endorse it.
I know you mentioned, we were discussing a little bit about bottom line business and having a positive social impact. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
You're seeing it more and more nowadays, is the B Corps and the double bottom lines and the Patagonias and the businesses that are on a mission, on a greater mission than just profit. Again, the cycle that we went on, what our mission is so closely linked. And that was the perspective that it gave us. It just showed us that life is too short and this world is in too much of a need for just upliftment for us to just turn a blind eye to that. Naturally, everyone needs to survive and be financially looked after. But really, if we're not, as individuals, all contributing to some sort of positive thing in this world, I'm not sure why we, what we're doing. If businesses are not, if businesses are the biggest entities, they're an entity like an individual, and these are the things that can have far bigger impact than each individual by themselves. So, it's really important that businesses are contributing positively to the world in some other way. And we're really starting to see it more and more nowadays. And yeah, we've really turned sharing joy into a business, which is kind of strange, but and it hasn't come without its tests and its trials, and we're still trying to iron out a whole lot of kinks and trying to figure it out day by day. But we've done something right, and people are asking for it and acknowledging that it is something that they would like to share themselves, and no matter what, we're going to continue to do that and hopefully inspire other people to start their own businesses with some sort of mission or whatever it might be. We're seeing so much strange news and negative press about so many different things, and I think now more than ever the world needs individuals and businesses to align to some sort of positive mission.
You must be doing something right, especially if people keep craving it around the world. So that's pretty phenomenal. As we're wrapping things up here, do you have any other tips or advice for people, either based on your trip or your experiences with Secret Sunrise, that you can offer?
A lot of what the journey of our cycle taught me and then continued through into our organization was really, and I've said this, I've done a couple of talks, and obviously I chat to a few people who are looking for some sort of direction or advice, and what I consistently say is, just look inward and define what success means to you. Because I think in this day and age, we've just attached success to financial success or prosperous business success, but success is so much deeper and so much more. And this is what the cycle and Secret Sunrise has taught me, is that what fulfills you and what keeps you motivated and what gets you up in the morning is something that's firing you and getting you, really kicking off. And to me, that defines what you should be leading with every day. Mm-hmm. And if you're able to do that and earn a living off it, despite how much you may be, yes, you need to be financially sustained and, kind of get by day to day. And if finances are your motivation, then yay, then you're successful. If finances aren't your motivation, look for what that is and really define what success means to you. It's not necessarily finances. And yeah, it's a beautiful lesson that the cycle and Secret Sunrise has taught me. Yeah, I feel like I'm just living my truth, and I know what success means to me. And yeah, we've got a long way to go on the financial front, and the COVID scenario has really thrown in a whole curveball. But despite that, we're continuing on our mission, and if it had to fall over today, I would say we've we've experienced success.
I think that's very well said, and I totally can relate to the feeling. I've had my own slumps where I wasn't fired up waking up in the morning, but I think once you start looking inward and finding that mission or vision, and trusting your instinct of what you want to follow, and once you wake up with that feeling of, hey, I can't wait for today to happen, or I can't wait to conquer what challenge is going to bring on today, I think you're in a really good zone in life of where you're at, kind of living, like you said, your truth and your mission, and being in that spot.
Yeah, exactly. And it takes little changes in your life. I know it's easier said than done, and you've got to, a lot of people feel like they've got to kind of look to where their priorities lie and look after their family, and which is 100% correct. But it takes little incremental changes in your life to really start getting on a path that's serving you and getting you up in the morning and making you happy and making you feel motivated and celebrating your day, celebrating life. And if you're able to make those small changes, you'll see a big difference on a daily basis. As you say,
it's nice to have you as an example of someone who does that and who's been able to follow like their own passion and vision to go ahead and start a great organization that's been enjoyed by many thousands of people around the world. So thank you for sharing your story. Usually when we end our show, we have a quick Travel Tribe toss-up. We just have 3 random questions that we like to ask, and just to kind of see the first thing that comes to mind. Are you up for it?
Yeah, always.
All right. Question number 1. What moment made your heart sing during your cycling journey?
We were cycling down this long hill, and we had 4 other guys on single speed, very clapped up bicycles, typical of what you'd find in a third world country. And we were racing them and all laughing. And I just remember their big white smiles, and that was just pure bliss.
On the other side of the spectrum, what was the most embarrassing moment of your trip, or any kind of cultural misunderstandings while you guys were on your journey?
Wow. On the spot, eh? We had a friend of ours join us in Egypt, and she's a girl, and so in Egypt, there was the kind of enforcement that if you're staying in a certain place, you were only allowed to stay with your wife. So we had to pretend that we were husband and wife for the night, or we had to dress her up like a boy. So we did both of those, and we managed to get by.
Oh man, that's fantastic. That's really cool. Last question. What was the most delicious or non-delicious thing you ate during your trip?
Most delicious. Wow. Geez. Every meal was just, as I said, fuel. So we just smashed whatever came our way. The least delicious, I would say, was somewhere in Tanzania. We stopped at a little kind of side of the road little place, and they got a little fire going, and there was chicken on the fire. And we sunk our teeth into it, and it literally felt like a rubber, I don't know, like a rubber tire, or something really not edible. And that really stood out.
Anything that unusual that you guys ate?
Unusual, yeah. We had some sheep's brain. That was in Albania, actually, of all places. You'd think it would be in Africa. We had some testicle, springbok testicle. Yeah. At that time, we really weren't fussy about what was fueling us. It was purely just to get us over the next hill.
Testicles are fuel. So
yeah.
Well, I guess we'll end on that, because that's a good place to end on. Grant, thank you so much for coming on the show, for telling us your journey, your cycling journey, and your work with Secret Sunrise, doing the business of joy. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Captain Boogie, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jordan. Nice to be on your show. Appreciate it. Thanks, Ashley, for introducing us.
Well, that does it for this week's episode of Travel Tribe Podcast. Join us each Tuesday as we release new episodes with great adventures. Until then, remember, the most dangerous thing you can do in life is to play it safe. Stay adventurous.